Okay, so you know how we like to do these really personalized deep dives, right? Well, this one's really something special. Someone reached out and asked us to tackle, well, the whole of Frankenstein.
The complete Mary Shelley masterpiece.
Yeah.
All its twists and turns. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing. Ambitions gone wrong, creations, consequences,
The full package.
a full deep dive into Frankenstein. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So we begin where Mary Shelley does, in the icy landscapes of the Arctic with Robert Walton. He's driven by this, I don't know, almost romantic vision of discovery, right? Pushing those boundaries. What are your initial impressions of Walton's aspirations?
It's that blend of ambition, that scientific drive, but also this deeply personal longing. It's not just about him wanting to uncover geographical wonders or achieve scientific breakthroughs.
Mhm.
There's a deeper layer there, this yearning for a real connection.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
He's out there in this incredibly isolated and challenging environment, craving a kindred spirit, someone to share those victories and defeats with.
Someone to understand the drive, the obsession, even.
Exactly. And it's so poignant when he writes, I have no friend, Margaret. That really hits you.
Yeah, it does. It makes you think maybe this need for companionship, that basic human need, plays a role in what unfolds, the tragedy that's about to come.
Quite possibly. It's in this very specific context, isolation and ambition, that Walton's crew encounters Victor Frankenstein. The way it's described, the sledge, the dogs,
Yeah.
this figure of gigantic stature,
Yeah.
it immediately grabs your attention.
Shadowing, right.
Absolutely. And then there's Victor's arrival. He's been rescued, he's near death, but his immediate concern isn't for his own well-being. He's fixated on whether they've seen another sledge, the one carrying the being he calls his demon.
That's just chilling.
It is. Walton's portrayal of him is so captivating. He describes a man clearly tormented, his eyes reflecting wildness and even madness, yet with these moments of benevolence and sweetness.
Like a flickering candle in a storm.
Perfect analogy. And it's Victor's plea to Walton. Hear me. Let me reveal my tale, and you will dash the cup from your lips. That pulls us in. He's desperate to share this horrifying experience, almost as a warning against the kind of unchecked ambition that Walton embodies.
Yeah. So we move from Walton's journey into Victor's life story. Let's go back to his beginnings. What kind of environment shaped the man who would dare to try and create life?
So we learn that Victor comes from a distinguished Genovese family. Think lineage, respect, public service. It's all there. His parents, though they married later in life, had this deep, loving bond. Victor describes a very happy, secure childhood surrounded by kindness. That contrast, makes the tragedy that follows even more striking.
Yeah, you can really feel it.
And then there's Elizabeth Lavenza, a key figure in this happy childhood. Her story is really touching. Victor's parents adopted her during a trip to Italy.
They found her.
Yes, they found her living in quite humble circumstances. Victor's mother was completely captivated by Elizabeth's grace and beauty, seeing her almost as a gift from heaven. She quickly becomes an inseparable part of the family. Victor talks about their deep connection, this incredible harmony between them from their earliest years. He also mentions Henry Clerval, another close friend from childhood, who shared their adventures.
So, even with this seemingly perfect upbringing, there were hints of Victor's intellectual curiosity very early on, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's this pivotal moment when he's about 13. During a family stay at an inn, he stumbles upon the writings of Cornelius Agrippa. At first he's indifferent, but then he gets completely drawn in by Agrippa's ideas about natural philosophy. When he tries to share his enthusiasm with his father brushes it off as utter nonsense. Sad trash were his words, I believe.
Wow. So not encouraging.
Not at all, but instead of discouraging Victor, it seems to do the opposite. It further sparks his fascination with these more, shall we say, unorthodox sciences. It kind of speaks to that theme of forbidden knowledge, doesn't it?
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. So it's like the more his father rejects it, the more appealing it becomes to him.
Exactly. Classic forbidden fruit scenario. Right. And it's not just a passing phase. It persists. He carries this interest in the occult into his teenage years. He dives into the works of Paracelsus, Albertus Magnus. Driven by this desire to understand the secrets of heaven and earth, his words, he's clearly drawn to these grand, sweeping theories about how the universe works, which are quite different from the more methodical, evidence-based approaches that would later dominate science.
Right, right. And his formal education takes him on a more conventional path towards the sciences. When he goes to Ingolstadt, he's 17, full of this passion for knowledge.
Yes. And his interactions with the professors there are so telling. His first encounter is with M. Kremp, the professor of natural philosophy. And let's just say, It's not the most welcoming start. Krempe basically tells Victor to forget everything he's learned so far, dismissing his previous studies as completely outdated and useless. He basically insists Victor start from scratch with modern scientific principles.
That must have been quite a blow.
Oh, absolutely. Victor's pretty discouraged. You can see it's a clash of different ways of thinking about science. It represents that shift happening at the time, where the old guard is resistant to the newer approaches.
Like a changing of the guard.
Exactly. But then Victor meets M. Waldman, a different professor altogether, and their interaction is completely different.
This is the turning point.
Absolutely. Victor attends one of Waldman's chemistry lectures, just out of curiosity, and it turns out to be a pivotal experience. Waldman is kind, encouraging, and his lecture celebrates the recent advancements in chemistry while respecting the contributions of earlier scientists, even those who were, let's say, less conventional. He talks about alchemists, how they laid a foundation, how even misguided efforts contributed to the progress of knowledge.
So he kind of bridges the gap between those older approaches and the modern scientific world, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And Victor really connects with that. He appreciates how Waldman provides historical context and shows respect for the whole lineage of scientific inquiry. It's impactful. Victor can't sleep that night. He's wrestling with these ideas, and he makes a decision. He's going to devote himself to science completely. It's a defining moment.
His path is set.
Exactly. And he doesn't waste any time. He goes back to Waldman, and this time in a private meeting, Waldman is even more welcoming. Victor talks about his self-directed studies, and while Waldman might raise an eyebrow at some of the authors, he doesn't dismiss it entirely. He guides Victor, recommends areas of study, and even offers access to his laboratory and his ongoing mentorship.
Like, imagine having that kind of support when you're so passionate about something.
It's incredible.
Hmm.
Victor himself recognizes the significance of this day, how it shaped his destiny. It emphasizes the power of mentorship, of someone believing in you and your passion.
Yeah, that can make all the difference.
From then on, Victor dives headfirst into his studies. Natural philosophy, chemistry, it consumes him entirely. He devours books, attends lectures, engages with the scientific community. He even develops an appreciation for Krempe's knowledge, despite their initial clash. But it's his relationship with Waldman that flourishes. They become friends, and Waldman has this gift of making even the most complex concepts understandable and exciting. And Victor's dedication is incredible. He spends countless hours in the laboratory, pushing himself to his limits, often working until dawn.
Talk about burning the midnight oil.
It's this very drive, this almost obsessive pursuit of knowledge, this deep dive into the secrets of life itself that leads him down a dark and tragic path. The creation of life.
And that's where the story really takes a turn.
It does. Driven by what he later calls a frantic impulse, Victor becomes obsessed with understanding life itself, the very mystery of it. He goes deep into anatomy, physiology, even going so far as to frequent charnel houses and slaughterhouses.
Whoa. Okay, that takes dedication, but also, that's pretty dark.
It is. He's not just observing death. He's trying to understand the physical processes of life and death in their rawest form. He becomes convinced that he's found the secret of life. But this kind of knowledge, the methods he's using, it all points to something ethically questionable, even sacrilegious for the time.
Right, because he's not just studying life, he's attempting to create it. That's playing God in a way that must have been deeply unsettling in that era.
Exactly. Victor himself admits later that his work was unhallowed. This ambition to penetrate the mysteries of creation was seen by many as a grave transgression. And this obsessive pursuit takes a toll on him, physically and mentally. He becomes pale, emaciated, constantly feverish. He isolates himself from everyone, completely absorbed in this secret work.
So after all this intense, solitary work, the moment finally arrives. He brings his creation to life. What happens? What's that experience like for him?
He achieves his goal. But the reality of it is a far cry from what he imagined. The moment he sees the creature come to life, he's overwhelmed by pure horror. Instead of the beauty he envisioned, there's only this breathless horror and disgust. He can't bear to look at it, so he flees and collapses into this troubled sleep filled with nightmares. And those nightmares are important. They foreshadow the darkness to come. He sees Elizabeth, his deceased mother. It's all very symbolic.
Like a premonition of the tragedy his creation will unleash.
Absolutely. When he wakes up, the horror is even more intense. In the moonlight, he sees the creature standing by his bed, its eyes fixed on him, making strange sounds, this grotesque grin on its face. Pure terror grips Victor. He runs, seeking refuge anywhere he can, haunted by the image of the demoniacal corpse he's brought into existence.
And this immediate visceral rejection from its creator is crucial, right? It sets everything in motion.
It's a wound that will never heal. The creature is thrust into this world, abandoned by the very person who gave it life, and that abandonment will have devastating consequences.
And for Victor, the aftermath is brutal. He's physically and emotionally broken. It's at this point that Henry Clerval arrives.
Yes, and Clerval's arrival is like a breath of fresh air for Victor. It's a connection to his past, to friendship, to joy. But Victor is traumatized. He falls seriously ill with a nervous fever, and Clerval, ever the devoted friend, nurses him back to health. But throughout this, Victor avoids talking about his scientific work or the creature. It's like he's isolating himself even further, but emotionally this time.
Keeping it all bottled up inside.
Exactly. As Victor recovers, they make plans to return to Geneva. But before they can leave, Victor gets a letter from his father, and the news is bad. His youngest brother William is very sick. Victor immediately prepares to go back with Clerval, but the journey is agonizing for him. On the one hand, he finds moments of solace in the beauty of nature, but then the thought of his creation, its potential for harm, just hangs over him like a dark cloud.
A constant drip.
Yes. And when he arrives near Geneva, the news is far worse than he could have imagined. His father tells him that William has been murdered. The family is devastated, and Victor is hit by this wave of grief and guilt. He can't shake this feeling that somehow his creation is responsible.
A terrible premonition.
It is. And it becomes more than just a feeling. Victor visits the place where William was killed, and during a thunderstorm, in a flash of lightning, he sees the creature in the distance. It's a fleeting glimpse, but for Victor, it confirms his deepest fear.
His world is now haunted by his own creation.
Precisely. And to make matters worse, Justine Moritz, a young woman who has been living with the Frankensteins and is deeply loved by Elizabeth, is accused of William's murder.
What? But why?
They find a locket in her pocket, the locket that belonged to William. It contained a miniature portrait of his mother. It's circumstantial evidence, but it's enough for them to accuse her.
So even though Victor and Elizabeth know she's innocent, they can't do anything.
It's a heartbreaking situation. Victor knows the truth, but he's terrified of revealing his secret. He's convinced that no one will believe him, that he'll be condemned, so he stays silent. Justine, under immense pressure, confesses, even though she later recants. But it's too late. She's convicted and executed. It's a devastating blow for the Frankensteins, especially for Elizabeth, who just can't comprehend how such an injustice could happen.
And Victor, bearing the weight of his silence, his guilt.
It's eating him alive. Elizabeth, her reaction to this is so powerful. She starts to question the very nature of good and evil, how someone innocent can be punished while the true culprit remains free. It shows how the consequences of Victor's actions are rippling outwards, affecting innocent lives.
It's a tragedy on top of a tragedy.
It is. Overwhelmed by grief and guilt, Victor seeks refuge in nature. He travels to the valley of Chamonix, hoping to find some peace in the grandeur of the mountains.
Does he find it?
He does, momentarily. The beauty of the mountains offers him a brief respite, a moment of escape from the darkness that consumes him. But it's shattered when he comes face to face with his creation on the Montanvert Glacier. It's a confrontation he can't avoid anymore.
He has to confront his creation.
He does. At first, he's filled with rage, horror. He threatens the creature. But then, the creature speaks.
Yeah.
And not just grunts or moans, but eloquently, articulately. He demands Victor listen to his story. And Victor reluctantly agrees. Maybe out of obligation, maybe curiosity, or maybe a sliver of responsibility. Whatever the reason, it's the first time he sees the creature as a being capable of thought and feeling.
It's the start of a dialogue, however painful.
It is. And the creature begins his story, offering a completely different perspective on what has transpired.
And we finally get to hear his side of the story.
Yes. And it's powerful. He describes his awakening, the overwhelming confusion of senses, being bombarded by sights, sounds, smells, touch, everything at once. It took him time to even make sense of it all. Then he talks about discovering fire, its warmth, but also the pain when he burns himself. He observes nature, the water, the trees, the animals. He's learning, adapting. But his first encounters with humans are traumatic. His appearance terrifies them. They attack him, reject him. It leaves him confused, hurt, and deeply alone.
So imagine being thrust into this world, already different, and then facing constant rejection just because of how you look.
It shapes him, defines his experiences. And it's so important to understand this because despite his capacity for kindness, his yearning for connection, he's treated like a monster. It highlights how prejudice can be so destructive, how people fail to see beyond the surface.
Judging a book by its cover.
Exactly. But then, by chance, he comes across a family, the de Lacys, and he observes them from a distance. And this becomes a turning point.
He finds something to hope for.
In a way, he hides near their cottage and watches them. He sees their kindness to each other, their love, their sadness. He sees the whole spectrum of human emotions and relationships. And through these observations, he starts to feel compassion, even admiration for them.
It's like he's learning what it means to be human by watching them.
Precisely. He starts to understand their language, connecting sounds with meanings. He sees their generosity, their struggles. He's getting an understanding of their social dynamics, their emotions. He even starts to experience emotions himself, this longing for connection, for belonging. He empathizes with their joys and sorrows.
And then he finds the books.
Yes, and that's a huge step. He finds Paradise Lost, Plutarch's Lives, The Sorrows of Werther, and he devours them. He learns about history, morality, the complexities of human nature. Paradise Lost especially resonates with him. He sees himself in both Adam, abandoned by his creator, and Satan, rebelling against injustice. It expands his understanding of the world, but it also makes him aware of his own tragic circumstances, how different he is, how isolated.
It must have been a very painful realization.
It is. And it gets worse. He finds Victor's journal, the one detailing his creation, and the entries are full of disgust, revulsion. Victor's own words confirm the creature's worst fears, that he is inherently monstrous, unwanted. It's a crushing blow. Any hope of acceptance from Victor is gone. He feels betrayed, filled with anger and hatred.
It just reinforces that sense of utter rejection.
It does. But then there's a glimmer of hope again. Safie arrives, Felix's fiancée. She doesn't speak their language, so the creature learns alongside her, observing her lessons. He refines his language skills, understands more complex grammar. He also sees a different kind of love, the love between a man and a woman.
A different facet of human connection.
Exactly. But this period of peace and learning is shattered when the de Lacy family discovers him.
Oh no.
He tries to connect with the blind father, hoping for understanding. But the others are terrified. They flee their home, leaving him utterly heartbroken. He's been rejected again by the one family he thought might accept him.
Imagine the pain of that after all he's been through.
It's devastating. He loses it. Filled with despair and rage, he burns down the cottage. It's a symbolic act, the destruction of everything he hoped for.
A turning point towards darkness.
Yes, and it's in this state of anger and despair that he meets William Frankenstein.
Oh no, that doesn't sound good.
It isn't. He's consumed by bitterness, by his desire for revenge against Victor. And when he learns that William is Victor's brother, he acts impulsively, driven by rage. He murders William.
It's horrific. The ripple effect of Victor's actions, they just keep expanding, leading to more and more tragedy.
Exactly. And it doesn't end there. The creature finds a locket on William with a miniature of his mother. And he does something truly cruel. He plants it on the sleeping Justine, knowing that it will incriminate her. It's calculated, cold, driven by a desire to make Victor suffer.
So after telling his story, the creature makes his demand. What is it that he asks of Victor?
He begs Victor to create a female companion for him, a being as hideous as himself. He argues that his loneliness is unbearable, that it's the root of his misery and his anger. He truly believes that with a companion who understands him, he could find peace. He promises that they would leave, go to a remote wilderness, and never harm anyone again.
It's a desperate plea for connection, for someone who can understand his existence.
It is. But Victor is horrified by the request. He refuses. The thought of creating another being like the first, unleashing that potential for destruction, it's too much for him. His moral compass finally kicks in, even if it's too late.
So he rejects the creature's plea. What happens then?
The creature isn't giving up. He argues that he wasn't born evil, that it was his suffering, his isolation that twisted him. He claims that with a companion, he could be good, be at peace. But he also threatens Victor. He tells him that if he refuses, he'll make his life a living hell, a constant torment. It's a powerful combination of pleas and threats.
A difficult situation for Victor.
It is. And Victor, torn between his horror at the idea and the fear of the creature's revenge, eventually gives in. He agrees to create the companion. It's a decision that will have devastating consequences.
The deal is struck.
It is. Victor goes back to Geneva, filled with dread, carrying the weight of his promise. His father, noticing his unhappiness, suggests a trip to England, thinking it might help. Victor agrees, seeing it as an opportunity to fulfill his dark pact with a creature somewhere more secluded.
So Victor and Clerval set off on this journey.
Yes, but while Clerval is excited about the new sights and experiences, Victor is consumed by the task ahead of him. The journey down the Rhine is so symbolic of their contrasting states. Clerval is filled with joy, appreciating the beauty of nature, the people they meet. But Victor is haunted by his thoughts, by the burden of his promise, and by the fear of what he's about to do.
His inner turmoil just keeps growing.
It does. They reach London, this hub of intellectual activity, and while Clerval is eager to explore it all, Victor is focused on his secret mission. He uses their time there to gather information, materials, everything he needs to create the female creature. But he isolates himself from Clerval and everything around him. The thought of what he's about to do is just agonizing for him.
The weight of it all.
Exactly. Then they get an invitation to travel to Scotland, and Victor sees this as his chance. He convinces Clerval that he needs some time alone, some peace and quiet, and that he'll travel to Scotland separately. It's a lie, of course. He's just looking for a remote place where he can work on his terrible task undisturbed. It shows how far he's fallen, how morally compromised he's become, even lying to his closest friend.
So he finds this secluded spot and begins work.
Yes, he finds a desolate island in the Orkneys, a bleak and lonely place that mirrors his own state of mind. He rents a basic hut, and there, in that isolation, he starts building this second creature. The atmosphere is heavy, dark, reflecting the nature of what he's doing.
And it's there that he has a change of heart.
Yes. As he nears completion, a terrifying realization hits him. He imagines these two creatures together, reproducing, creating a whole race of beings like them. The potential for devastation, for humanity being overrun by these creatures, it terrifies him. He sees the responsibility he has to prevent this from happening, and so he destroys his work. He breaks his promise to the creature, but in his mind, he's saving humanity from a fate worse than death.
But that betrayal doesn't go unpunished.
No, it doesn't. The creature arrives and sees the destruction of his intended companion. He's devastated, enraged. He feels betrayed, abandoned again. And he vows revenge. He tells Victor, "I will be with you on your wedding night." It's a chilling promise that hangs over Victor like a curse.
And the creature makes good on that promise, doesn't he?
He does. Shortly after, Victor receives news that Clerval has been murdered in Ireland. He finds his friends strangled, and the guilt, the grief, it's overwhelming. He falls ill, and due to unfortunate circumstances, he's even suspected of the murder himself. The creature's revenge is already taking shape.
A cascade of tragedy.
It is. Eventually, Victor is cleared of the charges and returns to Geneva, broken but thankful to be reunited with his father. Elizabeth is there for him, a constant source of love and support. And despite everything that's happened, they decide to get married, clinging to that hope for some happiness, some normalcy in their lives.
A glimmer of light in the darkness.
Yes. But Victor is living in constant fear. He knows the creature's threat is still looming, and he misinterprets it, thinking that he himself is the target.
Oh no.
And that misinterpretation leads to more heartbreak. On their wedding night, while Victor is desperately searching for the creature, convinced he's coming for him, the creature murders Elizabeth.
I can't even imagine the devastation.
It's absolute. Victor finds her dead, and his world collapses. He's lost everyone, his brother, his friend, now his wife. Everything he loved has been destroyed by his actions, by his ambition. The grief is too much for his father, and he dies too, heartbroken by the loss of Elizabeth. Victor is utterly alone, completely broken.
And that's when he dedicates his life to revenge.
Yes, he has nothing left to lose. He tells his story to a magistrate, hoping for help. But the magistrate is skeptical, unable to grasp the reality of the creature and its power. Undeterred, Victor sets out to find and destroy his creation. He travels across vast distances, consumed by this single-minded pursuit, driven by grief, madness, and a desperate need for vengeance.
And that brings him to the Arctic, back to Walton's narrative.
It does. He's weak, dying, but still driven by this need to see his creation destroyed. He tells Walton his whole story, warning him of the dangers of ambition, urging him to continue the hunt if he should die. It's a cautionary tale, a confession, and a plea all in one.
And in the end, Victor succumbs to the toll of his pursuit.
He does. He dies on Walton's ship. His feelings toward the creature are complex, even in his final moments. He still desires its destruction, but there's perhaps a flicker of recognition of his own role in everything that happened.
But the story doesn't end with Victor's death, does it?
No, it doesn't. Shortly after Victor's death, Walton finds the creature in the cabin. mourning over his creator's body. And in this final appearance, we see a different side to him. He expresses remorse for the murders, but he also talks about his own suffering, his loneliness, the torment of his existence.
A glimmer of humanity in the darkness.
He explains that he didn't start out evil, that he yearned for connection, for kindness. But the constant rejection, the fear and hatred he faced, it poisoned him, twisted him. He even expresses sadness at Victor's death, recognizing that he was his creator, despite everything.
It's a tragic realization, isn't it?
It is. And then he reveals his final intention. He plans to go to the most remote, desolate part of the Arctic and immolate himself, ending his own life to ensure that no other being like him will ever be created. He wants oblivion, a complete escape from his agonizing existence.
A final act of despair.
Yes. And with that, he leaves Walton's ship and vanishes into the frozen wilderness, leaving Walton and us, the listeners, to grapple with the profound implications of this story.
So here we are at the end of this deep dive into Frankenstein. It's a story that stays with you, full of powerful themes and questions that are still relevant today. It's not just about horror, it's about the very essence of creation, responsibility, the consequences of isolation, and how desires, even noble ones, can lead to destruction when they go unchecked.
It's a warning, really. Victor's story serves as a cautionary tale not just for Walton, but for all of us. It makes us think about our own pursuits, about knowledge, ambition, even our desire for fulfillment, and the potential costs that come with them.
And it leaves us with so many questions. Where do we draw the line in our pursuit of knowledge? How do we balance our ambitions with our responsibility for the consequences? How important are empathy and compassion in how we treat those who are different, those who might be the unintended results of our own actions? Frankenstein forces us to confront these questions, to look at the potential for both greatness and destruction within ourselves.
It's a story about what it means to be human in all its complexity. And that's why it continues to resonate with us, even centuries after it was written.